Good evening, just gone 7 PM on Tuesday, the 2nd of February 2021. My name's Toby Lepati Mesme, and this is another edition of MesmePolitics. Thanks for joining us, thank you for coming back. We are live with you for the next half hour, with you live until 7:30. Get in touch in the chat at any point. This is all the latest in UK and US politics from a unique leftist perspective. On the way, Northern Ireland wranglings, the coup in Myanmar, formerly Burma, Keir Starmer's party political broadcast, and the broader future of the Labour Party and the Labour movement. Is Joe Biden the first post-Reagan president? And AOC's absolutely harrowing account of the siege on the Capitol, the death of Captain Tom. We'll talk about that in a second, but also we'll be talking about George Osborne and how he is a complete sellout who betrays the moral ambiguity and basically shows up the Cameron Clegg government for the bunch of middle-class elitist charlatans taking out their sadistic fantasies on the poorest in society that it really was. First, at the top of the hour, I do want to talk about the death of Captain Tom. Captain Sir Tom Moore, the Second World War veteran who raised almost £39 million for NHS charities during the first coronavirus lockdown in spring 2020, has died aged 100 after testing positive for coronavirus. In a statement, his daughters said, "It is with great sadness that we announce the death of our dear father, Captain Sir Tom Moore. We are so grateful that we were with him during the last hours of his life. Hannah, Benji and Georgia by his bedside, and Lucy on FaceTime. We spent hours chatting to him, reminiscing about our childhood and our wonderful mother. We shared laughter and tears together. The last year of our father's life was nothing short of remarkable. He was rejuvenated and experienced things he'd only ever dreamed of. Whilst he'd been in so many hearts for just a short time, he was an incredible father and grandfather, and he will stay alive in our hearts forever. The care our father received from the NHS and carers over the last few weeks and years of his life has been extraordinary. They have been unfalteringly professional, kind and compassionate, and given us so many more years with him that we could never even have imagined. Rest in peace, Captain Sir Tom Moore." An incredible life, a long life and an incredible life. Think of all the things through his the unique prism of his existence that you'd see. Absolutely incredible that one person can live and see all the things he's seen, going right back to World War II, right through to today, being knighted by the Queen, raising 39 million in the middle of a global pandemic as not just an OAP, someone, 100, right? He was a genuinely unifying figure who no one had any quarrel with, right across the political spectrum. I've seen no one really say a bad word against him, or at least not many. There is just, we can all disagree about a lot of things, but I think we can broadly agree on the fact that he was, a hero. For what he did during the crisis, what he stepped up to do. It should never have come to that. We should never have had to rely on this army veteran to raise money for the health service. That money should have already been there, but the fact that that gap was there, it had to be filled, no one was filling it, he filled it, is nothing short of extraordinary. Every life, we've got to reiterate this, every life is precious. Every life lost to this virus is a great tragedy. No tragedy more than any other. And we should not be in this position where people are still dying in the numbers that they are. But we are, and we mourn everyone that lost a loved one to COVID-19 today. If that's you today and you're not related to Captain Tom and someone else you know or love has died, my deepest condolences to you. My condolences to the family of Captain Tom, and just all round condolences to anyone, because we all have or know someone who has lost someone to this god-awful disease, and my thoughts and prayers with every single one of you. Here is Captain Sir Tom Moore reflecting on his fundraising on Piers Morgan's life stories in September.
Captain Tom, I want to repeat that statistic because it almost defies belief. You raised £38.9 million for NHS charities in under 4 weeks. Can you even believe that now?
No, that was a lot of money, wasn't it, in short time? I mean, never did you anticipate when we started it would turn out like that.
You're in the Guinness Book of World Records for the most money raised by any individual charity walk in history.
Yes, that's amazing, isn't it? I'm very happy that it happened, but there was a lot of the people helping and a lot of people subscribed to that fund. So we must say thank you very much to everyone. They were all so kind.
It began when your son-in-law made a throwaway remark. I think Colin's in the audience somewhere. That little bet you made turned out to be worth £38.9 million. What do you make of it?
I'm very glad I didn't say I'd match it pound for pound.
Did you ever have any doubt that he would do it?
No doubt at all, he's so determined. We knew that he would really work hard to make it happen.
Rest in peace, Captain Sir Tom Moore. A great loss today, I think a loss that all of us feel. From all our varying life experiences, perspectives on the world. My perspective on the world would be miles apart from Captain Tom's perspective on the world. But for what he did at the end of his life, in the middle of a global pandemic, he has my utmost respect. Now, over to George Osborne, next story of the day. So George Osborne, the former Chancellor who orchestrated the austerity drive directly after the financial crisis, is dropping his portfolio career to become a full-time banker. You heard me right, the parody continues. Osborne announced yesterday that he is giving up nearly all his current jobs to become a partner at the investment bank Roby Warshaw. The former Conservative MP is currently editor-in-chief of the Evening Standard and chair of the Northern Powerhouse Partnership. He is also paid £650,000 per year for working 1 day a week as an advisor to the fund manager BlackRock. It is unclear how much Osborne will be paid at Roby Warshaw, which has advised on some of the largest UK takeovers since it launched in 2013. However, filings at Companies House show that the highest paid partner at Roby Warshaw collected $10 million in 2020 and $27.8 million for 12 months in 2019. This is the very George Osborne that was pressing the austerity measures, basically. This same guy.
When's the last time you bought a pasty in Greggs?
Look, I can't remember the last time I bought a pasty in Greggs, to answer your question.
That kind of sums it up. Now,
when was the last time?
As you're putting up the price of hot pasties in Greggs, if I buy a pasty from Greggs that's cooked hot, but by the time it gets in the paper bag and I take it away, it's cold, will it be vatable or not?
Well, if it's cold when you buy it, it will not be.
The whole world now realises that the huge overhang of debt means that the recovery will take longer and be harder than had been hoped. Markets are waking up to this fact, and that is what makes this the most dangerous time for the global economy since 2008. I believe the events around the world completely vindicate the decision of this coalition government from the day it took office to get ahead of the curve and deal with this country's record deficit. While other countries wrestled with paralysed political systems, our coalition government has united behind the swift and decisive action of in-year cuts and the emergency budget.
10 years, a decade of lost productivity, lost growth, and economic stagnation causing a flatlining of wages that's with us to this day. It was the single biggest economic blunder. the hypocrisy displayed by George Osborne, talking about hard choices and going off into a banking career, it should not be normalised. People who are the Chancellor of the Exchequer becoming a full-time banker should not be normalised. We should be angry about this. It's nowhere. No one's really reporting it. And it's not because they won't. It is there. It's out there in the public. It's just that no one cares. It's completely normalised. It's not newsworthy. That shouldn't be the case. That's what I'm trying to get through to you. That should not be something acceptable in a modern democratic society, and yet it absolutely is. There is a good case to be made that was the worst government this country's had in a very long time, potentially ever, purely for the ideological project it oversaw that was a complete failure. I will grow up, my generation will grow up bearing the burden of the damage that Tory government, those 5 years of disastrous policy had. Local authorities, local government is still feeling that today. Health services are still feeling that today. The damage wrought by that played a major role in our abysmal failure on coronavirus because we had zero public health infrastructure and most things have been outsourced to cost-cutting leechers that we call private companies, private outsourcing companies. It's dire. It's absolutely dire. And shame on George Osborne. Now, over to the United States. Is Joe Biden the first post-Reagan president? What does that mean? Well, Ronald Reagan in the States, much like Margaret Thatcher in Britain, ushered in the era of neoliberalism. The social democratic consensus that we had here and the sort of compromise we had in the States with a growing middle class, albeit only white people were benefiting from it, and relative prosperity. That was traded in, and the neoliberal doctrine was brought in of smaller government, shrink the state, funnel public money towards corporations, deregulate the capital markets, let everything run free, let the market roam, let the market rule over us, basically, and we can't do anything to help you. That sort of doctrine. Well, that was Reagan there, it was Thatcher here. It has been raised that potentially Ronald Reagan is potentially Joe Biden is the first post-Reagan president. There's been a piece on this written by Michelle Goldberg in the New York Times. It's definitely overly optimistic, but I'll read you a few quotations from it. When Joe Biden became the Democratic nominee, it seemed that the coming of a new era had been delayed. Reconstructive leaders, like in Schron-Runk's formula, repudiate the doctrines of an establishment that no longer has answers for the existential challenges the country faces. Biden is a guy who's made his way up through establishment democratic politics. Nothing about him seemed trailblazing. Moving on further forward. Yet, as Biden's administration begins, there are signs that a new politics is coalescing. When, in his inauguration speech, Biden touted unity, he framed it as as a national rejection of the dark forces unleashed by his discredited predecessor, not stale Gang of Eight bipartisanship. He takes power at a time when what was once conventional wisdom about deficits, inflation, and the proper size of government has completely fallen apart. That means Biden, who has been in national office since before the Reagan presidency, has the potential to be our first truly post-Reagan president. A number of officials he's selected, like Rohit Chopra for the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau, Gary Gensler for the Securities and Exchange Commission, and Bharahat Ramarati for the National Economic Council, could easily have fit into an Elizabeth Warren administration. Biden has signed executive orders increasing food stamp benefits, took steps to institute a $15 an hour minimum wage for federal employees and contractors, and announced plans to replace the federal fleet with electric vehicles. His administration is working on a child tax credit that would send monthly payments to most American parents. Well, that's the Liberal view. First things first, Biden ushered in the neoliberal consensus. He worked with the architects of the post-Reagan consensus. He his career has been dedicated to pushing the Democratic Party to the right and abandoning the working class. Post-Reagan is a really rich description. It's really, a Bernie Sanders administration would be the first post-Reagan presidency. Maybe even an Elizabeth Warren presidency would be the first post-Reagan presidency. But this sounds an awful lot like liberal hype, calling Biden the next FDR, the first post-Reagan president. I am yet to see anything on the scale that would be needed to usher in a New Deal or to change the hegemonic structure of US politics. It looks more likely that we might see some progressive priorities forwarded by Biden, if we're lucky, but it will not be a disruption to the neoliberal status quo in any way, because that status quo is what Biden has spent his life's work serving, and it doesn't look like he'll be changing that any time soon. There has been a write-up by Ross Barkan in Jacobin saying the era of neoliberal Svengalists like Larry Summers might be coming to an end. I'll read you a quote from the end. The wonks propose boosting unemployment insurance in lieu of direct payments, but few of them have had to wait months for their benefits to arrive, calling and emailing and even tweeting to no avail. Few have experienced their state-issued debit cards suddenly, without explanation, ceasing to work, resulting in a terrifying interruption of payments. For many Americans, $2,000 can cover multiple months of rent. Larry Summers, who has raked in millions from hedge funds and speaking fees, will never understand that reality. Money so small means nothing to him. There have been signs that neoliberals like Summers will enjoy somewhat less influence in a Biden administration than they did under Clinton or under Obama. Biden's White House economic advisors are noticeably to the left of Summers, and so far, the new president has bucked the advice of deficit hawks. Let's hope it lasts. Summer and his fellow Clintonites are always in search of a limiting principle to keep efforts to alleviate hardship from getting out of hand. What we need is a limiting principle on the baneful influence of neoliberals like Larry Summers. With the added quote, "From GameStop to COVID-19 relief, the past year has given us an abundance of reason to ignore the advice of neoliberal economists like Larry Summers. There are tentative signs that the Biden administration might just do that." So there is hope. There is hope. I would urge everyone, right? The potential is there to do something, to shift the consensus in some way or another. That potential is there. Don't deny it. Don't be so pessimistic that you deny it. Don't ignore it. But it is a much smaller hope than is being made out. It is there, though. It does exist. It's not complete pie in the sky. And it is something we can work with. A quick report for you now from CBS Evening News on Biden meeting with GOP senators over a smaller economic stimulus counteroffer.
And getting relief to all Americans struggling during the pandemic is one of President Biden's top priorities. But will he get it done with or without Republican support? CBS's Ed O'Keefe has the latest now from the White House.
At the start of his first face-to-face meeting with Senate Republicans, the president and former senator said it reminded him of the old days.
I feel like I'm back in the Senate, which I like the best of everything I did.
But the new president faces a potentially bitter fight over the size of the COVID relief plan and an early test of his campaign promise to work with Republicans. With a price tag of nearly $2 trillion, the administration's plan is over 3 times the size of the Republican proposal. Both provide similar funding for COVID vaccinations and testing, federal food assistance, and to help child care centers. But the Republican plan ignores the president's calls to boost the federal minimum wage, gives much less relief to schools trying to reopen, and provides smaller stimulus payments and unemployment benefits.
Right. You see, the thing is, the first thing, the pathway is there to pass this. It can be passed. Biden had better not sell out his voters on this. He'd better pass. 1.9 trillion is a bare minimum I can work with. Anything below that is completely unworkable. Biden's instincts will be to compromise and sell out his voters. He's got to resist them, or people around him have got to force him to resist. There was a problem. There was always a problem with electing a neoliberal pushover to the White House, and that is what we're seeing now. He is still a political dinosaur. AOC has been talking about her experience as a sexual assault survivor and her experience of the Capitol riot, where she genuinely feared for her life. I urge you to take a listen to this.
I'm a survivor of sexual assault. And I haven't told many people that in my life. But when we go through trauma compounds on each other. This past week, Ted Cruz and now Representatives Chip Roy and, oh, by the way, some of the other representatives who actually encouraged people to threaten members of Congress or tweeted out the location of the speaker are now telling me to apologize for saying and speaking truth to what happened. These are the tactics of abusers, or rather, these are the tactics that abusers use. And so when
I'd urge you to listen to the full video on her Twitter account where she's talked about a variety of these things, talked about how she feared for her life, how she hid, talked about her experience in that way, in that arena with sexual assault and things like that. Really brave of her to say that publicly. The abuse she gets online is absolutely obscene, and demonstrates the hypocrisy of many of the people that criticise her. Solidarity. It is appalling. It's disgusting. The way that the attack was used as basically a way to intimidate the left. The threat of violence towards the left, particularly in America, is rising towards progressive women of colour, like AOC in particular. She was right to fear for her life. I have no doubt about that. She would have been a target in that situation, and there were members of Congress on the inside who were aiding and helping the insurrectionists. The false equivalency some people make between the far left and the far right, quote-unquote far left and the far right, equating people like AOC who believe in free healthcare and a Green New Deal with white supremacist insurrectionists trying to kill her, is depraved. It is an absolute depraved... It's a depravitous comparison to make that false equivalency. And that's why I can never get on board with the centre ground. There is no centre ground on things like that. There will never be a centre ground on things like that. And anyone who thinks there is not on the right side. I want to quickly talk to you about the coup in Myanmar, formerly Burma. Here's Jeremy Corbyn in the House of Commons today on that.
Jeremy Corbyn.
Thank you, Mr. Deputy Speaker. Obviously, we must all absolutely condemn the coup in Myanmar. It is appalling what has happened. But sadly, it's been a feature of the lives of people in Myanmar ever since the 1960s of an overpowering, brutal presence of the military. And even during the more recent, slightly more democratic period in Myanmar's history, the military have occupied a special place in which they've been essentially untrammeled by any democratic accountability whatsoever. And the Rohingya people have suffered and will continue to suffer as a result of that. Hopefully one day we'll look forward to a more democratic Myanmar. Would he agree with me that when that happy day eventually comes, there has to be a constitution which does not give unaccountable power to the military, but brings them under the control of a parliamentary democracy? I was very pleased that he mentioned the United Nations Human Rights Council in his statement and one of his responses. And would it be possible for him to urge the UN Human Rights Council to put together very rapidly a delegation to be sent both to Myanmar and to Cox's Bazar to examine the human rights abuses that have happened, take the necessary evidence and condemn those that should be condemned, sadly, including Aung San Suu Kyi, who stood up in support of the military when her country was quite rightly condemned for the treatment of the Rohingya people.
So that's Jeremy Corbyn showing what solidarity is really like. My view on this is just on principle. We don't care who's been removed. The coup is wrong on principle. It's military overreach. It is a long-lasting problem in Myanmar. Let's see real international action in terms of getting serious about how wrong this is, how this is a thing that must be reversed. The will of the voters in Myanmar must be respected. And we must refuse the UN. We must seek genuine action, not just piecemeal words. And countries must refuse to cooperate with the new government, the military government in Myanmar, or whatever that amalgamation is going to become. Because, on principle, this is wrong. It's a coup. It should not be recognised as legitimate. Keir Starmer has brought out a party political broadcast securing our economy, protecting the NHS and rebuilding our country. Those are Labour's priorities. Have a listen.
This has been a period in our country's history like no other. The British people have been asked to sacrifice so much, told to stay away from friends and loved ones, juggling childcare with working from home. Children have been pulled out of the classroom, businesses told to close. Our key workers have been asked to step up over and over again. I share your anxieties about the weeks ahead. Sadness that somehow we're back here again. Frustration at promises that have been made but never delivered. And anger at the mistakes that the government has made. Why have we had one of the worst recessions of any major economy? Why have we had one of the worst death tolls in Europe? I'll keep asking these questions of the government. I will keep standing up for families across Britain. But unlike the previous months, there is now light at the end of the tunnel, a shot in the arm that can protect us from this terrible virus and offer the whole nation hope of a way forward. That is why we must come together to get Britain vaccinated. That is our national mission. We were the first in the world to get the vaccine. We can be the first in the world to get our country vaccinated. That means renewing the contract with the British people. We stay at home, the government delivers the vaccine. And when this nightmare ends, and it will end, we can come together. We can build that better future that I know is possible. That cannot mean a return to business as usual. We've sacrificed too much for that. We've lost too much for that. We must rebuild for a better future, one that can provide opportunity for everybody, restore people's pride in where they live, and give families the security to prosper. These are my priorities. They are Labour's priorities, and they are the priorities of the British people. Securing our economy by supporting good businesses to create good jobs in every village, every town, and every city. Protecting our NHS by cutting waiting lists, rewarding our key workers, and fixing our broken care system. Rebuilding our country by restoring pride in our high streets, ending the waste and the cronyism in Westminster, and investing in our businesses to make them the envy of the world. This past year has been like no other. There are many days we just want to forget. But I believe that our best days are ahead. The vaccine will deliver, the cloud will lift, and together we can build that better future. Together we can make Britain the best place to grow up in and the best place to grow old in.
That's Labour's party political broadcast there with the tagline, secure our economy, protect our NHS, rebuild our country. The talking points in this are spot on, particularly for older voters. Talk about cronyism in Westminster, all these things. These are sort of things that you do hear, the average voter, older voters say. And I think that will resonate to an extent. It is a really well-produced, really well-made video, and it's clearly doing what it says on the tin. It's clearly targeting the people Starmer wants it to target. The question is, A, will any of these older voters bite? Unless something happens to the property market, it's unlikely that many will deviate from the Tories. And if they do, what about Labour's base? The core people that Labour cultivated under Corbyn, younger people, the diverse new working class in Britain. If you throw them under the bus, they go back to not participating, and politics in Britain is less vibrant, less rich for it. Whether or not it serves Labour temporarily in the short term, it will doom Labour in the long term if they throw those people under the bus. They're their core, they can't betray them. This was not speaking to them. Labour has gone back to talking about young people like they're an alien entity, not an integral part of the political project. Because of the vaccine bump for the Tories, Labour will be lucky if they're at 35% in the polls in a few months, if everything keeps going well for the government. Staying above water is Starmer's next challenge. Preventing the polls from sliding back to where they were pre-COVID. Treading water, that is the next mission. And we're going to have to see if that can actually be managed. It is a mountain to climb. An absolute mountain to climb. But we'll see. We'll see. That has been Tuesday evening's edition of MesmePolitics. I'm Toby Lepati-Mesme. This has been the latest from UK and US politics from a leftist perspective. Please subscribe, like the video, tell your friends, and I'll see you same time, same place, tomorrow. Between now and then, email me, tobyjoshua2004@gmail.com. Get me on Twitter for all the latest at TobyJoshuaUK, or my daily 5-minute reads on UK and US politics. On Medium at TobyJoshuaPolitics. Subscribe, tell your friends. Thank you for getting involved. My name's been Toby Lepati-Mesme. I've been bringing you all the latest in US and UK politics from a leftist perspective, and I'll see you very soon for Wednesday.